Sign up for Melanin Muse's free weekly love letter at melaninmuse.com, delivered to your inbox every Wednesday to get full video podcast episodes of the Pivot Muse and indulge in Black women's brilliance and learn as we share our pivotal stories. Trina and Ebony meet up at Tina's house. They are sitting on the front porch when a large blue Buick pulls up. The girls look at each other and burst into laughter. Oh my gosh, is this what we're riding in all the way to Atlanta? Trina says. Yup, come on, y'all, Tina responds sarcastically. Tina steps down to introduce Ebony and Trina to Mark, who is their schoolmate Marlon's big brother. He's there to pick the girls up for their road trip. Hey Mark, this is Ebony. She lives on the east side, and you've seen Trina around, but she hasn't met you before. Mark says hello and opens the trunk of the car. They drop their bags and hop in the back seat. Tina sits in the front seat holding a map in her hand. I'm riding shotgun because I know how to read maps and I ain't trying to get lost, okay? She says. I got y'all, don't worry, says Mark. Although Ebony was nervous at first, she's full of excitement to take another road trip without her parents. She passes Mark a cassette tape. Hey y'all, these are some beats Marty gave to us to freestyle and write rhymes on the road, Ebony says. Mark places the cassettes in his car radio and Ebony starts to freestyle rap. They drive for 6 hours straight, no stops, playing music, writing rhymes, freestyling, and having so much fun. Meanwhile, Mark is focused on driving but amused by the girls' antics. They are just outside of downtown DC when Mark stops to gas up and grab some food for them. After eating, they head toward the Capitol building to find parking. Mark guides the girls to visit the White House for the first time. They didn't have an official tour, but they were able to take photos with their disposable cameras of the exterior and with each other. They also visited the Washington Monument and Lincoln Memorial before leaving. Okay, Royalty, let's get on the road so we can make it in time to have the famous Philly cheesesteaks for dinner. They drive another 2.5 hours to Philadelphia to Geno's Steaks. It's nighttime, so Geno's is lit up bright with red, yellow, and blue lights all around the building. The girls were so excited to see the crowd of people in and around the restaurant. They order their cheesesteaks and sit outside on benches at one of the tables to eat. Thank you so much, Mark, for bringing us here and taking us on this road trip, Tina says. No problem. Y'all deserve it. Do y'all like the Philly cheesesteaks? He asks. Yeah, the girls say in unison. Well, it's really good, but why does everyone here use ketchup instead of steak sauce? Tina says. Mark laughs. I know, we're used to the best homemade sauces like boss sauce, but it's different here. Everywhere you go, you'll notice some cultural differences even with Black people. Mark responds. Right? This would be way better with some G&G steak sauce, okay? Trina chimes in. Y'all Westsiders always got something to say, Ebony says. They laugh. After eating and taking photos, it was time to hit the road for Atlanta. It's a long 12-hour drive from Philly, so the girls take turns sitting in the front seat to keep Mark alert and resting in the back. Mark makes one rest stop midway, early morning, to sleep a few hours and for the girls to use the restroom. As the sun rose, they were back on the road. Now Tina, Trina, and Ebony are rehearsing rap songs and coming up with new ideas for their next show. Tina's pivot story continues in episode 7 of the Pivot Muse podcast and is brought to you by Penthouse Media.
It's important for me to acknowledge that the Pivot Muse is presented by Melanin Muse. Melanin Muse is our love letter to Black women, sharing our genius and our impact on the world. It's owning our narrative because it's our time. As you've pivoted throughout your life and career, who are your Melanin Muses and what impact have they had on your journey?
I would say my melanin muses are my mentors growing up. I would say my line sisters. I like to call the people in my life my board of advisees, right? My best friends from 10 years plus. Of course, my mom, my sister. Honestly, all the Black women in my life have played a pivotal role into just being Black, being melanated, overcoming adversity, and just giving me the wisdom to be the woman that I am today in front of you.
Love it. Thank you for sharing that. The Pivot Muse brings you curated stories and advice from global professionals on making one of life's most important decisions, which is the pivot. I'm your host, Natina Marie, and our guest today is Jahylin McKee, a visionary architect of synergy and the CEO and principal publicist of her own full blown PR agency, J. McKee and Co. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
Let's get real and talk about you and your pivotal journey here. I would love to take a deeper dive into Jahylin, the person. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and what moments, let's say pivotal moments, that made you who you are today.
That's a good question. I would have to say my whole life's theme has been built on nothing but a pivot. From my very beginning, I have lived a very interesting life, I would like to say. From the time I was born, I wasn't breathing. So let's just rip the band aid off right there. I wasn't breathing for 2 minutes. And luckily, I came back to life. From that moment, I had always been a traveler. I've been traveling since I was 5 years old. My parents separated at an early age. Their number one priority was just making sure that co parenting was at the top of the priority list. So I was always going back and forth between Atlanta, St. Louis, Atlanta, St. Louis, Atlanta, St. Louis. From there, I feel like that kind of just taught me what it means to really be a well-rounded person. I was raised as an only child on my mom's side. However, I do have two sisters and a brother on my dad's side. Through those experiences, I feel like I lived two different lives at the same time because whereas like I went to school in Atlanta and I grew up in Atlanta, like I still spent a huge chunk of my childhood, a huge chunk of my summers, my winter breaks in St. Louis. It's taught me how to adapt in different environments. It's taught me how to switch up, code switch in one setting, but be able to be relatable and likable in another setting. From early on, I just fell in love with traveling. I just love new experiences. As a single child on my mom's side, I got involved in a lot of activities, whether that was taekwondo, cheerleading, track, volleyball. I was a theater kid. I was a physical trainer for the football team. I ran track, honey. I did it all. But like, I was never afraid to pivot. I was never afraid to try something new. I carried that on into my upcoming years as a college student. I ended up going to Savannah State University. I didn't know what I wanted to do because I had so many interests. I knew what I was good at, but I always wanted to know, Jahylin, what would be the main thing that you would do for free? That was like the buzz question. A lot of folks was getting young folks to try to figure out career paths. I like to talk. I like to write. I started off as an English major. As I continued to just get involved, I started going to the direction of like mass communication. At the time, I wasn't a mass comm major, but I was taking a few mass comm classes. So I ended up switching my major to mass comm. Again, another pivot. My sophomore year was a very pivotal moment into my life. And a lot of people don't know I was going through a lot at that time, believe it or not. I went through my very first heartbreak my sophomore year of college. I was in a relationship where I thought it was going to be like that was the end all be all. I was
Right.
in a long distance relationship, and I was just so gung shot on proving to people like high school sweetheart relationships can work. Da 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 da. Let me tell you, I had a 4.0 my freshman year. All I did was go to class and go back into my dorm to talk on the phone with my boyfriend. That's all I did. But when I went through the breakup in my sophomore year, I was like, I have to do something else. I have to get myself out here. That was the time for me to really evolve. So I went back to what I knew to do best, find my interest in different things. I ended up joining every organization you can think of. I was in a modeling troupe. I ended up pledging. I was a part of the PRSSA, which is like the Public Relations Society of America. I did it all. I felt like that was such a pivotal moment in my life because I didn't know that was preparing me for what I do now, which is publicity, which is public relations, which is branding, which is marketing. I was doing all of these things as a college student, more so even to the point where I had made a bet on myself. A lot of people were infatuated with the idea of pageantry and validity and just the crown and the sash. I was really interested in seeing, is public relations really for me? What I did was I put a bet on myself. At the time, I was getting into a lot more of my heavier public relations classes. I literally took what was required to be a public relations internship and I turned that into my reign. Throughout my junior year of college, I ran a really huge campaign. I took it very serious. The theme was scandal. And my platform was the best HBCU experience because I felt like a lot of people knew of Savannah State, but they didn't know Savannah State to be their top pick. My mission was to make it Savannah State their top pick. I didn't even realize I took Savannah State on as a client. I really dedicated my whole platform into making sure students walked away knowing that they were going to have the best HBCU experience. Fast forward, I ended up winning. I told myself, I said, if I don't win this campaign, I'm pivoting. I'm doing something else. I ended up winning Miss Savannah State. Literally, my college professor allowed me to take my Miss Savannah State reign as an internship. I carried all of those tools with me as I decided to make the hugest pivot of my life that would change the total trajectory of my life. And that was betting on myself, taking all of my graduation money and moving to New York. I had $500 to my name. I said, I want to be a publicist in the entertainment industry and I'm going to figure it out. I had never been to New York. Nothing. I said, this is what I want to do because I'm not staying in Atlanta. I'm definitely not staying in Savannah. I have to pivot. My whole campaign, my whole reign, I applied all of that into my business. And that was how J. McKee and Co. was born. From there, the rest has just been history.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for really giving us that context of the journey. That $500 is very small, minimal when it comes to going to New York City. For the audience, I know you had a friend, you stayed on the couch. What did you do with $500 and how did you like really transition in New York?
Child, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't realize
Please.
how expensive New York was when I first moved out there. I had an opportunity, a 1 day gig to do Summer Jam in New York, brought to you by Hot 97. And you know what a Summer Jam was. To break it down for the Southerners, Summer Jam is like equivalent to like Birthday Bash. I was living in a very small apartment in East Harlem, and the event was at the Met Stadium, which is in New Jersey. I didn't know that. I ended up spending at least damn near 100 of those dollars. I took an Uber.
Oh my gosh. What year was this?
This was 2017.
Okay.
I took an Uber to New Jersey because I didn't want to be late. I might have moved to New York Friday. I think the gig was on that Sunday. I'd never been to New York before. This gig was not going to be the day that I was going to experiment with the train. I had never spent that much money on an Uber before. I was like, oh my gosh. But I was like, do I have a choice at this point? Luckily, by the grace of God, I had an elephant book bag. And someone asked me if I was a Delta, and I was like, yes. And they took me home for free. And I was like, thank God. So as far as like the rest of the $400, now this is why I don't always encourage other people to take other people's paths because everybody's situation is different. I don't recommend people moving to New York with $500 to their name. However, for me, it worked out because my best friend, she was living in New York, and so she let me sleep on her couch for free. My mom supported me when I came up here a little bit. I had all my line sisters sending me cash apps. I was getting very creative. That first day I did that gig, I worked my ass off that day. I was on my feet for maybe about 15 hours straight. All I had to do was get in the room. But once I got in the room, I was going to make sure you remember my name and you was going to remember my face. I got offered a job on the spot. And I ended up being on the street team at Hot 90. If you work in radio, you know what a street team is. But honestly,
Absolutely.
it was a beautiful experience because that's how I got a chance to learn New York. I had to drive the big old van and I had to take the equipment out. I was in the Bronx, I was in Staten Island, I was in Brooklyn. I was everywhere, but that was the way that I was able to learn the city very quickly. After I started making a little bit money there, I ended up actually becoming an assistant to, to a celebrity, which was Grammy Ma. That was how I was able to get a lot of my things paid for.
Right,
basic,
right.
basic necessities, right? Ooh, we traveling today. I know I'm gonna eat a meal. Like we gotta go somewhere. I know I got somewhere to lay my head. As long as I got the basic necessities, I can make $50 for the week stretch.
Right. What I love is you said that you bet on yourself. You took a chance when you decided to leave with your graduation money, which was only $500, and go to New York. You never been there before. You had no clue how expensive New York was. But you also bet on yourself again when you was like, I won't be late for this first opportunity. And you took an Uber. It was taking a chance on yourself, which led to the opportunity to work on the street teams. That's an important thing to understand about the characteristic of someone that's like successful with the art of the pivot is really that self-awareness, the confidence to really take a chance. Like you said, you may not recommend for someone to move to New York with $500, but it worked out for you. But it also worked out for you based on the decisions you were making. And at that moment, you really believed in yourself and you put yourself out there. If you was late, you would have never got offered that job.
That was the theme. That was something that my best friend told me because she's 2 years older than me. She didn't coddle me. She didn't spoon feed me because she was on her own track trying to figure out in the TV and the film industry. My theme for the first year of New York was just figure it out. First of all, I want to thank you for even how you even broke that down and how you just really analyzed that because I've told this story a lot, but I never really thought about it like that. One thing that I told myself was I can always go back home.
Right.
If it doesn't work out, I always have my mom's house to go back to. I would have always had a level of resentment towards me if I didn't at least try. I feel like a lot of us get paralyzed. Oftentimes, we see this vision and then we attach emotion to the what is. And it's by the time I done sat up here and came up with this whole story as to why it wouldn't work out, now I didn't stress myself out. I got anxiety. I'm hyperventilating. And it's all because it was in my head. No risk, no story. That was my theme for 2017. Like, no risk, no story. Had I not done that, I wouldn't even be sitting here telling you it today.
Absolutely. You brought up this opportunity you had to do some work with Remy Ma, and that allowed you to, one, make a bit more money and obviously make some connections as a person that is on this road to becoming a publicist and owning your own agencies. What did you do with that opportunity to help make sure that you could pivot into the next step of your career?
That's a great question. Technology is not as advanced back in 17. It's so crazy to even say that, but we didn't have TikTok. We were finding our footing on Instagram and Facebook was already established. But the DIY, the entrepreneur spirit, the resources, the connection, the entertainment industry wasn't that advanced, but technology in terms of just being a creator wasn't that advanced either. I didn't have a blueprint. I didn't have a foundation. All I could do was connect with other people, hope I run into someone and see what type of advice they could give me. I didn't have get ready with me, come with me, TikTok as I'm going to
Right.
be as I'm going to be an assistant today. Come see my day in the life. I mean, I had YouTube and I tried to do the best that I could. But I just honestly wanted to just do my best. I was super nervous. But one thing that I felt like carried me and separated me from the pack was that I always thought 10 steps ahead. One of my favorite movies is The Devil Wears Prada. I can honestly say I have lived my Devil Wears Prada dream.
Okay.
That essentially was my life. And it was a beautiful experience. I don't take it for granted. Do not ever be afraid to do free work. I embraced it. I was happy to be in the room. At the time, I wasn't as buttoned up business wise, and I embraced those challenges and I embraced those mistakes to just at least have the opportunity to fail forward. I feel like a lot of times this generation is different, and I don't want to sound like that auntie, but I gotta say,
I'm definitely gonna say it.
if you didn't have right, if you didn't have the opportunity, you wouldn't even have the opportunity to make those mistakes or be in the room. Sometimes the experience is the currency. I knew that at the
Ooh.
time. Like I was just happy to be in the room. Even nowadays, like I pay my interns. I may not pay them like the first 30, 60, 90. I need to see what you can do. At least I try to figure out other ways to compensate them. If they're a college student, I'm gonna make sure you get that college credit. If you are in a program, you need a letter of recommendation. That's my form of currency. Going back into my experience as an assistant, my goal was to just always try to think 10 steps ahead. I wanted to like really like embody what it means to be a servant leader because that's who I was in college. That's who I was molded to my whole entire life. And so I really just applied like my life skills, my life practices. I leaned on my village. I leaned on my mentors. My mentor was an assistant to Kevin Lyles. I was calling her all the time. It was a lot of moments where even though I didn't have the answer, I was going to go figure it out. I was the assistant. I was the photographer. I remember one time she asked me if I knew a videographer or can I shoot on a camera, and I was like, yeah. My best friend, her roommate, who's my other close friend, he had a camera. And I begged him to use his camera. Did I know what I was doing? No. But guess what? I went on YouTube and I figured it out. Even though I couldn't necessarily edit the content or the footage, guess what? I reached back into my network of the mass comm students that I was still friends with, and I hit them up and I said, hey, I need a favor. I have this content. It's going to go on this Google Drive. Can I email it to you? And can you chop this up and make this video for my boss? You got 24 hours. Can you do it? And they did it. They would edit the content. They would send it back to me and I would send it to her and she wouldn't even know I had went through all those hula hoops to make sure that I had got it done. I feel like a lot of times people just expect for things to either be handed to us. Figuring it out is a lost art that we have to bring back.
Absolutely. First of all, you dropped a few gems that I need to rewind. Okay. I don't want someone listening to miss the moment. But the first one is for you to say your experience was the currency. It is that experience that you can take and place a value to. It's unfortunate, but it's not just like the kids' fault in a sense. This is the age of the internet and social media. Folks have made a lot of money online. So the thought process is just a little different.
Right.
But it is so much value in the experience that you get and the network that you could build through that experience. It really is about what you do with the experience after that.
I think it's just the way we tell the story about the experience, right? I think there's an added layer that we just forget to say there's nothing wrong with doing it free because later on down the line, I'm able to charge what I'm able to charge now because of that. I didn't get paid for that. I didn't expect to get paid for that. I get paid? Yes. But in the beginning, I was willing to do it for free. That is the beautiful part about it. Even though in that moment it didn't help my bills or my needs or whatever it is I needed in that moment. Maybe I couldn't go shopping that day. Maybe I couldn't get my hair done that day. But those were the seeds that I was putting into the experience and into the publicist, into the business owner I am today.
Absolutely. And like you said, the fact that you have all that experience allow you to place a value to what your services would be moving into doing it on your own. I also
Absolutely.
love the fact that you said when your boss asked you, can you do it? And you were like, yes. We need to make sure that we're continuing to instill in the younger folks that you fake it till you make it. Like that is literally a thing. And especially because we have YouTube University, why not say, I got you and figure it out from there?
The very thin line, but yes, I'm not gonna lie
Absolutely.
and say I'm a professional chef, but if it's a skill set that I can go figure out to get the job done, absolutely. But let's not say we are the professionals who we have not got the experience to be, because I feel like that's where things get a little tricky. And then for
Absolutely.
the people who are the experts, we get a bad rep because someone wanted to go figure it out that way. Someone could be listening to this and say, okay, well, I can go now and charge X, Y, and Z dollars because I'm going to go figure it out. No,
Right.
it don't work like that.
No, that's the thing. Issa Rae said, make sure that you're networking across because there's so many people that's right on your level that can help you make something happen, that can introduce you to the next person that's going to be very pivotal to your career or your life. I would love to talk about this transition. You're building your network, you're working for Remy Ma. Shout out to Remy Ma. You decide not to go work for someone else, or did you have another job before you start your business? Tell us a little bit about that journey and how you use that experience to really help you kickstart this business.
After my time with Remy, I ended up pivoting again into working for ICM Partners, which is a really huge talent agency here in New York. I was working for one of the top female music agents. I love her even to this day. It's so funny now. I'll see her in events and she's like, I'm just so proud of you. Shout out to Eve Pierre. After that moment, okay, Jahylin, like you're trying out different things, you're seeing what you like, you're seeing what you don't like. What's next? I knew at the end of the day, my heart was supposed to be in publicity. My heart was supposed to be in public relations. I didn't want to shy too away from that. Being an assistant was amazing. I felt like the experience is what I needed. I needed to do something that was going to challenge me a little bit more on my skill set level. It helped me with foundational reasons in terms of building character. But when it came down to publicity, I would needed to figure it out. I ended up applying to a lot of jobs. I remember one time I showed up to, it was either BET or Combs Enterprise. I made it seem like I had an interview.
Oh, okay. I love it.
I made
That's
it
that New
seem like
York
I was like,
energy.
I'm here for my interview. I got in and I actually got a chance to talk to someone, but I didn't get the job. I got to a point where I was like, I need to make money. And nobody is calling me back.
Mhm.
I joined this group called Black Girls in Media. Shout out to Tasha, that's my girl. It was just a simple group chat. This girl, her name is Yana. Shout out to Yana. She put in there that Calvin Klein was looking for PR assistants. I said, yes, this is for New York Fashion Week. It was maybe a 2 week contract job. It was like
Okay.
a gig. I was like, yes, this is gonna be it. I don't know what I'm doing, but it was a different experience because we all know a lot of us, especially in the job market, you cold apply for something, you are like a needle in a haystack. But relationships are everything. The HR person or the hiring manager, there's a 9 times out of 10 likelihood that you are going to get some sort of correspondence that way than to just cold apply. She put me in contact with the hiring manager. I had an interview and I got hired on the spot. That was my first real PR gig, and it was during New York Fashion Week. It was beautiful. Like I felt so energized. It was a confirmation. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I was the only PR assistant that got invited to the show, and we didn't even know it was going to happen like that. Fashion world, very cutthroat. And again, it goes back to that same work ethic I had when I had my first gig at 97 Summer Jam. I worked hard. I went all over New York City, hand delivering invites to people to come to the show. I came in early and I left late. I was the first one there. I was the last one to leave. The day of the show, we all thought we was going to the show. Only two of us got a chance to stay. They were like, everyone else can go home. I was so shocked. I couldn't believe it. I remember it was like around the time where the first Black Panther came into theaters, February of 2018. It was the spring show. I remember taking a selfie with like Michael B. Jordan, and I got a chance to meet Chadwick Boseman. I got a chance to walk him to his seat. I'm like, this is going to be my life. From that moment, oh, it's up because I've always had a liking to public relations. I got my degree in public relations and I minored in business marketing. However, social media was my first love. If I didn't know how to do nothing else, I knew how to brand myself. I was so good at branding myself on social media. I was able to grow my following. I was able to really authentically tell my story. I was a fearless little girl. Y'all gonna see the good, y'all gonna see the bad, y'all gonna see the ugly, y'all gonna see the in between. I was just taking my friends and my followers and my family on the journey. My mom, a real southern lady from Alabama. We from Birmingham. She's like, Jenna, stop telling all your business on social media. Social media. Don't nobody need to know you was doing that. You making it seem like I was a bad mama. No, but that's my story. This the season and that's my story right now, Mom. In that same little apartment, that's where Jahylin McKee & Co. was born. I took my butt on Canva. I designed my first logo. This gig was beautiful. It put the battery in the back that I needed. After it ended, I said, okay, now what? I wasn't waiting on no one else to give me a job. That's how Jahylin McKee & Co. was born. I just started offering my services. I started off offering social media services. I started offering PR. I started offering it to my friends. I had a friend who had a up and coming clothing line. What can I do? I'll never forget my first client paid me $600. And I was just like, I made it. I can do it. I can do
I
it.
love it.
I had $600 cash stamped to me. I told my friends, I said, oh, I can start giving y'all rent money now.
Okay.
And literally after that, I want to say maybe 8 months later, I was able to move into my first big girl apartment in Brooklyn.
That is beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I just love your ambition to make it happen. And we have to really tap into those times where like you're applying for jobs, but you're not actually getting the opportunities to work for someone. You could wallow in that, or you can be like, okay, I can still make this happen on my own. Obviously, that was the path God had set for you because that's where you are and you're flourishing in it. I just love that you had this self awareness. That self awareness, a really important thing about mastering this art of the pivot is being self aware of who you are, your talents. And sometimes you don't always know everything for sure, but you just got to trust your gut and bet on yourself like you did from the beginnings.
I was okay with failing forward, and I was okay with failing forward in front of the same audience that saw me as Miss Savannah State. That's that same audience that saw me as Jalen the Delta. I was okay with that same audience seeing me as an assistant. I didn't care. But somehow along the way, I feel like I lost my voice in that a little bit. And so that's why even today with me doing this podcast, it's so empowering because I light up with telling my story, but now I'm so intentional about continuing in that path of who I was coming up into that because somewhere along the way, as we're on whatever road to success or however success looks like for us, we don't talk about the things that we as business owners, us as people who are chasing after our dreams, go through.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. That's why this is so important. And I'm
yeah,
so excited that you really took the time to do this because I've been on this world of entrepreneurship for a really long time, worked
yeah.
with and helped a lot of folks on their journeys. We need to tell our stories.
The
So
good,
obviously
the bad,
we're
and the ugly.
yes, the good, bad, ugly, and be real about it. I love that you're sharing this story. I have a game I want to play, but I have a couple more questions if you're cool with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Some of these questions are coming from Michaela, my
Okay.
super producer.
Love
Yes.
her.
I really appreciate you taking a step back from what you've done today to talking about that journey. You've done some amazing work, and we do want to talk about the work you've done with your company. Just thinking about how you've placed a lot of clients in great spaces. You've had some really great outcomes. How do you actually make those decisions on what's best for your client, regardless of what they want? We know clients come to you with their goals. How do you figure out what's best?
That's a great question. It's important to base the relationship off of trust. If we don't have trust, we don't have nothing. Sometimes clients, and this is why us as publicists, we have to also make sure we're vetting out what type of client is going to speak to you the most.
Right.
A lot of times people think they need publicity and they don't. A lot of times people think that publicity is built off of vanity metrics and it's not. And so you have to really align yourself, especially in terms of working in entertainment specifically. What type of impact will this drive? Alongside of that, helping them understand that this is not going to make you famous. This is not going to put money in your pocket short term. Now, long term, you will, yes, get the ROI. You have to trust me to do my job because that's why you hired me. Whereas I am looking on the market and I'm looking at the landscape of journalism and I'm looking into my Rolodex of relationships and I'm looking and I'm considering all the things. But we may have to work backwards and we may have to take baby steps. Yes, it is very possible for you to get on Good Morning America. We have to make sure that we're hometown heroes first. What about the local news first? Sometimes we gotta walk before we fly, and sometimes we gotta crawl before we walk. With me and my clients, I'm always keep it 8 more than 92. For me, it's always about tone and delivery. I try to keep my clients realistic about the type of placements that they can get. I also make sure that I'm intentional about the way that I'm delivering that message to them because I'm a communicator. And so I have to also apply those same skills when I'm communicating KPIs to my clients.
Right. I love it. Let's talk about one of your case stories, which is your clients when you did the work with Nike for Yard Runners. Thinking about that project and you had great success with the project. What does that look like? What can you share about this project that turned out to be amazing from behind the scenes that you had to work through to make that happen?
It's really all based off of relationships, right? Even the way that I was recommended, God plays a really huge role in my business strategy. I thank God that people are keeping my name in rooms that my feet haven't entered yet. When I got called to do the campaign, I was so excited about it because it was such a full circle moment for me. I really got a chance to embody what it means to be a Black woman in public relations. And it wasn't just a pick up and put down project. I really put huge thought and consideration into these stories and making sure that these stories were told properly. It came natural to me because I was a former HBCU student. I was a former HBCU leader. Taking a trip down memory lane and reconnecting with like even some of those same very platforms that gave me my accolades and my flowers. Just the excitement about the story and presenting it to my counterparts. A lot of times, it's not really more so about the publication, but it's the person behind the pen. If I went to an HBCU and said journalist went to an HBCU, it's a lot more connectivity right there for the story to be picked up. It was honestly like me talking to my homegirl, like, girl, let me tell you, because we was gonna talk like that regardless. It just kind
Right.
of makes it a lot more rich. It makes it a lot more relatable. It makes the story a lot more earned. because there's still like that level of integrity behind it. It was a beautiful process to see like all of my counterparts where I planted seeds when and we all came up together and now we really get a chance to use our powers for good. That was like the most exciting part about it. The technical part to it, we're gonna make sure it's nice and tight. It was such an empowering moment because the whole experience from the person who recommended me, they went to a HBCU, from the person who employed me, hired me for the opportunity, went to an HBCU. My team that was full of Black women under the age of 30, we all went to HBCUs. And even some of the press and some of the journalists that I got a chance to reach out to went to an HBCU. That was probably one of my most favorite projects I ever got a chance to work on because it just felt like home and it just felt like family.
I love me a full circle moment, especially in your
Yeah.
career and you're working so hard to get there. It's beautiful. Kudos to you on the amazing work that you've done. We have a thing that we say, and the pivot continues. Where do you see yourself, your business ventures in the next 5 years? And are there any other spaces you're looking to pivot into?
Oh my God, that's such a great question. I'm buying a building. I am buying a building.
Yes.
God put it on my heart. I have never seen a Black woman own a building specifically for public relation professionals. When I redid my logo during the pandemic and I rebranded my business, I had it in mind that can I see this logo on a building? And can I see J. McKee and Co. growing into a Fortune 500 or a Fortune 100 PR agency? Can we be an Edelman? Can we be a 5WPR? You know what I mean? Can we be a lead company? Right? Within the next 5 to 10 years, I will have a building. That is the reason why I'm even still up here in New York. I seen a building and I drive past it ever so often. It's a PR building. It probably has about 50 floors in that building. And every time I see it, I get so excited because I said, I'm going to have a building just like that. And I'm going to employ women, Black women,
Yes.
black men, HBCU students. I really want that to be a cultural hub, and a symbol of resilience, and for us to know that we can own these things too.
Mm.
Sometimes we just get so excited to be in the room, and sometimes we got to go back and buy the building,
Oh,
the whole
yeah.
block. So
Yes.
that is my goal. I've seen it. God has confirmed it. When the grand opening happens, Miss Natina, you are invited.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad I get to know you now because I already
Yes,
know.
but we are buying the building. We are buying the building. So
Yes. I touch
that
and
is
agree.
definitely my
Listen, it's up and it's stuck. You don't put it out there, it's happening.
goal.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
I love that. It's very important for us. I am just so excited that you spent this time with us. If you have a few more minutes, we want to play our game. It's called Pivot or Push. I'm going to give you a few scenarios. Either you're going to say that you will pivot out of that scenario or you're going to push through. You're entering a serious relationship. You discover significant differences in values and life goals. While tempted to pivot away and seek a more compatible partner, you deliberate on whether open communication and compromise can bridge the gap, or if it's time to just move on and focus on your personal happiness. Do you pivot or push?
I pivot.
You
I
pivot.
pivot.
Okay.
Life is too short.
All right. So you're entering the workforce at 22. You're drawn to the gig economy and the flexibility it offers. Considering a pivot towards freelancing or sticking with a traditional 9 to 5, you weigh the pros and cons of job security and benefits, or the pursuit of work-life balance in today's dynamic job market? Do you pivot?
So 22, gig community, freelance, job market isn't that great, but I have an opportunity to go into corporate America.
Yes. You have a traditional job and you can stick with that, or you pivot to do the freelancing.
I'm going to say the freelancing just because there has been moments where I have tried to go back to corporate America and it just hasn't worked. Honestly, I haven't had a real job since I was 22.
See, there you go.
Well, I have had a real job. I have not had a job in corporate America since I was 22.
All right. Last scenario. So you're 25. You're in a tough situation. You actually with a employer, but you're unhappy. You don't have liquid savings in a savings account. But if you leave your job and cash out on your 401k, you can take home 20,000 and start over. Do you pivot or you push?
I'm pivoting. I'm a risk taker. I'm gonna find an accountant and tell her to help me.
Listen, you pivot with 500, so I already knew you was gonna pivot with 20K. You like, let's go.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna risk it all.
500 and New York City. Since we talked a lot about your career, you mentioned relationship very early on. Tell us why you would pivot out of that first scenario where I asked you about the relationship and having different life goals. You chose to pivot versus staying in the relationship and seeing if communication and some other things would get you two on the same page.
To be honest, I think I'm just at a point in my life where I have been through a lot of different interesting scenarios similar to that. And I just feel as though, as a Black woman, I am not responsible for other people's actions. Shout out to my therapist, by the way.
Okay.
The girlies are in therapy right now. And so I'm a woman of choices and I'm a woman of understanding when to step away from things that are no longer serving me. But more importantly, I know at the end of the day, I am only responsible for my own happiness.
Mhm.
And I can't go based off without not self-serving myself. You get what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
sometimes it's subjective, right? Like it could be a good thing or a bad thing. But I feel like at the end of the day, people are gonna always do what's best for them. I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Okay.
And I feel as though I am just in a empowered space and I'm in an empowered season where I have played small. I have tried to stick it out and it has led me into a space or it has led me to people who I ain't had no business being around. It made me sense of myself. Now I'm only inviting energy that I'm not only reciprocating, but I'm well deserved for.
Ooh, yes. I'm here for that. Shout out to your
Yes,
therapist, girl.
yes, yes. She always reminds me, Jahylin, like you are not superwoman. You are not responsible for anyone's healing other than your own. And I'm just leading with that.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.